Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Pluto Sextile or Trine Natal Pluto. Now, this transit may manifest in power, control, transformation, passion, desire, probing, being in harmony with power and control. And I'm going to elaborate and expound on that. This is a time, I would say, where you could control any urge for this tremendous power in a situation, whether it might be in a business or what have you. Positions of power are not necessarily bad by themselves, but being obsessed with having power to a point where someone may become overly domineering, where they're romping all over people and taking advantage of that. This is a time where you would have greater ability, I would say, to control that more so than usual. And it's really being to, I would say, having power, having more control in a crisis situation as well. This is a very good transit for that. You're talking about the transit of Pluto making a positive aspect to the natal Pluto. And some may wonder, well, what is the difference between this transit and the conjunction? Well, the conjunction, for one thing, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get the conjunction in your lifetime. This is something you'll have when you're born. You'll have the transit Pluto making a conjunction for for a certain time after you're born, but that's really it. That is you're talking about no one's going to live right now in these times. No one's going to live that long to experience the conjunction. And if there was some point where somebody did, they would obviously, I would say, it would be an exceptionally transforming time for them when somebody would be very obsessed with exceptionally obsessed with the power and control. But I think this is something that's not going to happen anyway, at least not in our lifetime, where anyone could really experience it, because they're just simply not going to live long enough to do so. But what I want to get at, as far as this transit goes, this can be a time too where you could have just that right amount of passion and desire to do Plutonian things, whether it's matters with insurance or rebirth, regeneration, taxes. It could be dealing with crime or corruption in your area. If you're trying to do any probing in terms of, like, say, if you're involved in an intimate relationship and you're just you're not 100% sure about the person, it can be an auspicious time for having that deep research on that person, being able to run an investigation, and being able to do so less likely having roadblocks or any diversions or distractions in this. And this is also a time when this transit does take place. If you're trying to you could be having a little more control in a shared resources scenario. It can be positive for a transformation. It could be connected with support. It could be more about maybe you giving more, or vice versa. It could be about receiving more support. But one way or another, it could be positive, whatever were to go down during this time as far as that goes. Now, this could also be a time when you have this transit. If you have any issues anatomically connected with Pluto, such as the colon, the prostate, the bladder, urinary tract, or reproductive system, it can be a time that could be positive for action in these matters, for having, again, that passion and desire to do something about it. To if there's surgery that may be required with any of the body parts that are connected anatomically with Pluto, this could be a propitious time for that. Pluto is associated with surgery. It's also a time where, again, if it's something where, if you've had any of these issues that are anatomically connected with Pluto and you've hesitated or procrastinated on them, it's a time where you're more likely to do something about it. more so than usual. Also getting the support needed, whether it's moral, emotional, or monetary support on this matter at this time. And it can also be a time if you've experienced any death, whether it's something recent time or it's something you've been grieving over for a protracted time period. It's about getting, it can be a very positive time for receiving, that support in that matter at this point in time. And also, if you're in, say, if you're in a shared resources situation, it's really, again, not just about having a little more control over it, but again, I would say getting the support needed for, in that as well, where you're not, like if it's been a situation where you feel like you've been, doing, the majority of the work or bringing in most of the money, this could be that time where maybe it could even out a little and you could be getting, some, more support on the other end from the other person or persons that are involved in this, whether, it could be a business connection or what have you, but it could also be a time where if you're trying to get, I would say too, this could be very, auspicious for like getting a loan as well. Pluto is associated with that. It's also connected with support. It can be a time as well where, when this transit does take place, I would say it also could be very positive in matters, with deep research, investigation, going beyond subterfuge and superficiality. It can be a time where you can put a lot of, this focus, on these matters. And it's also, and it can be with the assistance of somebody, you might be in an intimate connection with. And it's also a time as well, if you're dealing, with some kind of, let's say in your community, there's some kind of crime or corruption, that's been transpiring. It can be that time where you have a little bit more passion and desire to do something about this at this point in time. It might be a time as well, when this transit does take place, if you're trying to like resurrect, some kind of, business, especially I would say if it's something Plutonian, it can be very positive. It can be a good time to do this. I mean, say if you were in a business, connected with the occult, which includes astrology or insurance or taxes, or you were in some kind of loan business, or you're working in some, you're at a funeral parlor business, anything, that could be Pluto related. Especially, this could be that time for that revival and rebirth of that at this time of this transit. And it's also, time as well if you're dealing with any trauma, in general. I mean, if you have, say, if your Pluto is in, it's in Virgo, or, and especially if you have it in the first or sixth house in your natal chart, if there's something, with like the spleen or intestines, for example, it might be something where you're more apt to get that support for this at this time if you're dealing with any kind of trauma, just in general. Anyway, well, another way this transit could manifest, it could be very positive for having, again, the passion and desire, which is Pluto, to make a major change or transformation, which is Pluto. Let's say, for example, if the natal Pluto is in the first house, it could simply be the transformation of the physical body. Again, going back to, let's say, if it's in Virgo as an example, natal Pluto being in Virgo, it could be a transformation that's done, in a very, systematic manner and scrupulous attention to detail. Now, another thing too, this could also be auspicious to get the support, which is Pluto, in a shared resources, which is Pluto's situation. Let's say, for example, if the natal Pluto is in Scorpio in the 7th house, it could be, Scorpio related, partnership, business partnership. It could be something with insurance or the occult, which includes astrology, recycling, taxes. It could be some funeral, director, kind of, parlor kind of business. Um, so anyway, hold on a moment, people. Now, also too, this can be a time where Pluto-related people, when I say Pluto-related people, I'm talking about could be somebody in the Plutonian profession, such as the occult, which includes astrology or insurance, taxes, recycling, somebody that might be in loans or investigation, or even somebody that you may simply be in an intimate relationship with. Those people may be more in harmony and agreement with what you desire, which is Pluto. Now, if the natal Pluto is in Sagittarius in the fifth house, as an example, it could be doing something with sports or the outdoors, which is Sagittarius, and in games, which is the fifth house. And now, could also be a time where it's propitious for control, which is Pluto. And it can be just simply just being generally obsessive or compulsive, which is Pluto. If the natal Pluto is in the fifth house, it could be over something with gambling. So, speculation. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.